Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you could join me today. Before we dive into this fascinating topic, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Your support means the world to me, and it helps the channel grow so I can continue to bring you more thought-provoking content. Alright, let's get into today's discussion, because it's a big one. Can a narcissist have a spiritual awakening? At first glance, the question might seem contradictory, almost paradoxical. After all, when we think of narcissism, we often associate it with traits like self-centeredness, a lack of empathy, an inflated sense of self-importance, and an almost obsessive focus on one's own desires. Narcissists are often seen as people who believe the world revolves around them, while spiritual awakening is generally understood as a journey toward greater awareness, humility, and interconnectedness with others. The two concepts seem to clash. Narcissism appears to be all about ego, while spiritual awakening is often described as the transcendence of the ego. But is it really that simple? Let's break it down. First, we need to consider what a spiritual awakening actually means. Spiritual awakenings come in many forms and can happen in a variety of ways, but generally speaking, they refer to a profound shift in perception and consciousness. When someone experiences a spiritual awakening, they often report feeling a deeper sense of connection to the universe, a greater awareness of their place in the world, and a sense of purpose or meaning beyond their own personal desires. It's about going beyond the self, experiencing empathy, compassion, and a more universal understanding of life. But here's the thing. Spiritual awakenings aren't reserved for the saintly or the perfect. In fact, they often happen during times of crisis or personal challenge. A spiritual awakening can be triggered by a loss, a health scare, a traumatic event, or even hitting rock bottom. In these moments of vulnerability and humility, people are forced to confront their own limitations and ego-driven behaviors, leading to growth and transformation. So, could a narcissist, someone whose entire identity is seemingly built on ego, be capable of such a shift? To answer this, we need to take a closer look at what narcissism really is. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. We all have narcissistic tendencies to some degree. It's part of being human. It's when these tendencies become extreme and harmful to others that we talk about narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. NPD is characterized by a long-term pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. People with NPD often have difficulty recognizing the feelings and needs of others, and their relationships can suffer as a result. However, even within NPD, there are different types of narcissism. One distinction is between grandiose narcissism and vulnerable narcissism. Grandiose narcissists are the ones we often picture when we think of narcissism, outgoing, charming, and confident to the point of arrogance. They seek out attention and admiration and often see themselves as superior to others. Vulnerable narcissists, on the other hand, are more introverted, hypersensitive, and prone to feelings of inadequacy or shame. They may have a more fragile self-esteem, but they still engage in many of the same narcissistic behaviors to protect themselves from feeling vulnerable. What's important to understand is that narcissism often stems from deep-seated insecurities and unresolved emotional wounds. Many narcissists, especially the vulnerable type, are driven by a fear of rejection or feelings of worthlessness, and their grandiosity is a way of compensating for those internal struggles. In this sense, the narcissist's outward arrogance can be seen as a mask for inner pain. This is where the possibility of a spiritual awakening comes in. If a narcissist is able to confront their underlying wounds and fears, it could open the door for a spiritual transformation. In fact, some might argue that narcissists, with their deeply buried feelings of inadequacy, could be more in need of a spiritual awakening than most. But does that mean it's likely to happen? It's certainly not easy. For a narcissist to have a spiritual awakening, they would first need to recognize that their ego, the very thing that defines their narcissism, is not the ultimate truth. This means acknowledging their flaws, letting go of their need for admiration, and confronting the pain they've been trying to avoid. That's a tall order for anyone, let alone someone who has spent much of their life building an identity around being superior to others. But here's the thing, people change. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but change is possible. Even for narcissists. Just like anyone else, a narcissist could experience a crisis that shakes them to their core and forces them to question their beliefs and behaviors. A grandiose narcissist might face a loss of status or a humiliating failure that challenges their sense of superiority. A vulnerable narcissist might experience rejection or abandonment that triggers a deep sense of insecurity. In these moments, a narcissist might be forced to confront the emptiness and loneliness that comes from living in an ego-driven way. It's in these moments of crisis that a spiritual awakening could occur. But it's important to remember that a spiritual awakening doesn't necessarily mean a total personality overhaul. It's not as though a narcissist will suddenly become a completely different person. The process of spiritual growth is gradual and often involves setbacks. A narcissist might start to become more aware of their behaviors and the impact they have on others, but that doesn't mean they'll suddenly stop seeking admiration or validation. They might have moments of deep insight and empathy, but those moments could be followed by periods of regression into old patterns. That said, even small changes can be significant. If a narcissist begins to develop more empathy, even in small ways, that's a step in the right direction. If they start to recognize that their sense of self-worth doesn't have to come from external validation, that's progress. Spiritual awakenings are rarely a one-time event. They are often a series of moments of realization and growth that happen over time. For a narcissist, the journey towards spiritual awakening might be slower and more difficult than for others, but it's not impossible. One thing to keep in mind is that spiritual awakenings often involve a sense of surrender, a letting go of control and ego. For a narcissist, this could be incredibly difficult, as their identity is so wrapped up in the need for control and superiority. However, if they are able to let go even just a little, they might find a sense of peace and connection that they've been missing. It's also important to consider that spiritual growth doesn't necessarily mean becoming a perfect or enlightened person. Spiritual awakenings are about expanding consciousness and deepening awareness, not about achieving some idealized version of goodness. So, even if a narcissist doesn't become completely altruistic or selfless, that doesn't mean they haven't experienced some level of spiritual awakening. It's about progress, not perfection. Of course, not all narcissists will have a spiritual awakening. Some may continue to live in their ego-driven ways, never fully confronting their deeper emotional wounds. But for those who do, the journey could be incredibly transformative. It might not look the same as a spiritual awakening for someone who isn't narcissistic, but that doesn't mean it's any less real or profound. So, can a narcissist have a spiritual awakening? The answer is yes, but with some big caveats. It requires a willingness to confront the ego, face painful truths, and embrace vulnerability. It's not easy, and it's certainly not guaranteed, but it's possible. After all, spiritual awakenings aren't about being perfect or saintly. They're about growth, awareness, and transformation. And those things are available to anyone, even a narcissist, if they're willing to take the journey. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. This is such a complex and nuanced topic, and I appreciate you sticking with me through it. If you found this discussion interesting, make sure to give this video a like and share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.